guys, my name is Megan Schneck, and I'm a part of the University of New England's Medical Physiology class. And today, I'll be discussing the determination of gender and how genes versus hormones will impact this pattern of inheritance. In the lower left slide, you can note that this is a picture of a karyotype, which is the chromosomal inheritance of a patient. And here is 23 pairs of chromosomes, which equal up to 43 chromosomes. But on that lower right, which you can note here, is going to be your XY chromosome, and that would mean that that would be a male karyotype. We'll get into that in a later slide. And then on the lower right side, we're going to note that this would be a hormone. And does anyone know what that hormone is? That's testosterone, and that's a male androgen hormone that we'll get into also in the next slides. So just before delving into the biological aspects of gender, I wanted to discuss the definition of Oxford's dictionary for gender, and I'll just read that out. Either of the two sexes, male and female, especially when considered with the reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. The term is also used more broadly to denote a range of identities that do not correspond to established ideas of male and female. And the reason why I wanted to preface with this was that there are a lot of other aspects to gender than just the biological aspects, like our karyotypes, our genes, our chromosomes, and hormones. There's a lot of cultural and gender identity discussions going on in today's pop culture just about gender itself. So we're going to begin with sex determination. Just to introduce to you guys, we're going to talk about gonads, and gonads are the organs in the human body that produce the egg and the sperm, and those are the reproductive products of the human body that will eventually unite during fertilization, and they'll form a zygote, which is a fertilized egg from a sperm. So the testes are the male gonads, and that would technically be our testicles, and they produce sperm that will eventually unite with a female's egg that is produced by our ovaries. And our eggs travel through the fallopian tube into the uterus, and typically the uterus is where fertilization and implantation of a viable zygote will occur. Sex determination is programmed in the human genome. And typically we have two sex chromosomes. We have X, which denotes female, and Y, which denotes male. The X chromosome is larger than the Y chromosome because the X chromosome contains many more genes that typically would be missing on the Y chromosome. The X chromosome actually has a lot more that are crucial for viability at fertilization. So the egg and sperm cells are haploid, which means that they're a single copy of a chromosome, and when they unite, they form a unique combination of 43 chromosomes, and that's kind of how we get our specific unique genotype that denotes a phenotype physically, and how we all look different and behave differently, and it's pretty amazing. And then also we have hormones, and hormones play a massive part in gender development and sex determination, and also just the overall progression of our organs and how we identify later on as adult human beings. And just to rattle some of those off, we have testosterone, we have anti-Müllerian hormone, dihydrotestosterone, which is also known as DHT, progesterone, estradiol, and then we have FSH and LH, which kind of work synergistically, and we'll also speak about that later. So genes, how do they determine gender? If you look over on the right side, I think everyone's seen that picture somewhere between whether it was high school, college, in their education, and that is a Punnett square. A Punnett square determines the pattern of inheritance for a patient or offspring, whomever you want to call them, whether it be for a specific trait, but in this case it's for gender. Offspring inherit one chromosome from each parent, and that's why you see on the top of the Punnett square XX, which would be from the mother, and then along the side vertically it would be XY, and that's from the father. So you have a 50% chance of roughly a 50% chance of becoming female and a 50% chance of male, depending on what chromosome you receive from each patient at fertilization. Females identify as XX, like I said, and males identify as XY in the karyotype. but some abnormalities can occur. So you can have XXY, which is a male. They typically do have some abnormalities that we won't dive into in this PowerPoint. There's also YO, which is not viable because of the importance of the X chromosome and some of the genes that are crucial for viability on the female's X chromosome. And then you have XO, which is Turner syndrome, and that's where you don't inherit a gene from the male patient, from the male parent into the offspring. And this is typically female patients that if they do survive fertilization off into being a fetus and baby, they'll have a short stature, they'll have delayed development and other issues on top of being infertile. Most of these patients don't make it through fertilization, and they'll either be a stillborn or a miscarriage. But in order for these patients or offspring to have proper reproductive function, they must have 2 chromosomes, and that being XX or XY at minimum. And then I thought I'd mention the SRY gene, and that's the sex-determining region of the Y chromosome. With this SRY gene, our bipotential gonads are able to develop into testes, and they also stimulate a cascade of other hormones and expression in our male patients. But without the SRY gene, even if you do have the karyotype of a male, your gonads will present as ovaries, just due to the fact that that SRY gene is not present on your genome. So, hormones. How do they determine gender? I was going to speak about just a few of these today, and on the right you can denote some of their chemical structures. So, testosterone. Testosterone is typically identified as a male hormone, and it converts the Wolffian duct into the seminal vesicle, vas deferens, and epididymis, which are all identifiable as male characteristics, male reproductive organs. And they also control testicle migration into the scrotum, because typically males' testicles are undescended at birth and or being a fetus, and they have to descend down into the scrotal tissue in order to become viable for reproduction, and that's what testosterone controls. It also, I'm going to jump down 2 bullet points, is a precursor for dihydrotestosterone, as long as you have 5-alpha reductase and NADPH. Dihydrotestosterone, DHT, is a large contributor to the development of external male genitalia, and it controls prostate development in males. Anti-Müllerian hormone is another male hormone, and it helps regress the Müllerian ducts, which is the female ducts, as opposed to the Wolffian duct, which is the male. And if there's an absence of anti-Müllerian hormone, you can obviously imagine that the Müllerian duct is going to become a fallopian tube, a uterus, and the upper vagina, which is all female structures. Another, some really crucial hormones that I might mention would be the progesterone and estrogen, and that's just really profound hormones that must be present for female structures to develop, and they also regulate our menstruation and contribute to our capability of reproducing. So quickly, males, again, they're the inheritance of XY chromosomes. You have Y from the father and X from the mother. These are just some specific genes that can regulate the transcription of anti-Müllerian hormone, how the male's gonads develop, and these SRY genes. And then again, the Wolffian duct is the male's duct that will eventually develop into the seminal vesicle and vas deferens, as well as epididymis. Females, they have an inheritance pattern of XX, receiving X chromosomes from both parents. They don't have an SRY gene, so that their bipotential gonads are able to progress into ovaries. And then those 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are the 2 primary hormones that help develop a female into their mature self. And then finally, we have the Müllerian duct, which is the female duct. And as long as you have the proper hormones and proper genes, your Müllerian duct is going to develop into your fallopian tube, your uterus, and your upper vagina. Now that you have learned some characteristics of female and male development in the womb as well as postpartum, I hope that you can take this further with you in your studies, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.